Welcome back to In Ohio Country today, and with me today is Glen Arnold with the Ohio State University Extension. And Glen, since the last time you were with us, your titles and your duties have kind of changed, and
Right.
you're doing some different things. So you want to kind of talk about what you were doing, what you're specializing in now.
Sure. I was a Putnam County Extension agent for about 22 years, and I had to develop more of an interest in manure research plots, manure utilization. So, just about a year and a half ago, Ohio State created a position where I could spend 100% of my time working on manure issues across the state of Ohio.
Well, and those are hot topics as we deal with things that we have within the watersheds and the three basic watersheds that we have in Ohio.
Right.
Tell us about your research and what that means when you're talking about manure management.
Sure. Well, I'm a field specialist with Ohio State University Extension, which gives me the time to work on these types of projects. And what we're trying to do is we try to do a lot of on-farm plots with individual farmers so they can see the value of manure as a commercial fertilizer versus commercial fertilizer on their farms in various parts around the state of Ohio. So I have plots up in the Lake Erie watershed in northwest Ohio. I have plots over as far as Bucyrus to the east, and then I have plots in Mercer County and Darke County that we're working on this year.
When you say you have plots, can you
hmm
can you tell us what you're doing with those plots? Because I thought it
Sure.
was pretty interesting looking at some of the video.
Sure. What we do is we've got some very nice manure application equipment back here that we've secured. And essentially, we take manure out of the farmer's source, which is usually a pit underneath the hogs, and we take it out to the field and we side dress the corn plots, or in some instances, we top dress the wheat plots with hog manure. And then we'll take those to yield in the fall. And then when the combines roll in October, we'll be able to show or not show that the manure was an excellent side dress nitrogen source for the growing corn crop.
Tell some of our we have a lot of viewers that are involved in agriculture and understand that. Can you also tell for our other viewers, our other folks, what we're trying to accomplish here by doing this?
Sure. We know that manure is a product that has a lot of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash in, and all farmers want to be as good to the environment as they can. They're conscious of the phosphorus and the nitrogen that's in that swine manure. We know that if we can apply that to growing crops, we're going to capture a larger percentage of the nitrogen and phosphorus that's in that livestock manure than if we applied that manure to a field that doesn't have a growing crop in July, or we put that out after corn and soybeans in the fall. So what we're trying to do is demonstrate to farmers and the farming community that we can make better use of this livestock manure by using it with the growing crops. And then once farmers see that, then farmers themselves will really begin to focus more closely on how they can make this same technology work on their individual farms.
Interesting point that you had made. We talked about, specifically, say, the Lake Erie watershed. It was interesting how much you said water it actually held in the Great Lakes as to the revenue that it generated. You want to talk about that a little bit and why it's important, for example, dealing with the Lake Erie watershed and keeping that water quality good.
Absolutely. Lake Erie is about a $10 billion industry up there with the fishing, the tourism, the recreation. About 90% of the watershed is agricultural in nature, which means we grow corn and soybeans and wheat, and we have livestock in that watershed. So we know that water quality issues directly affect agriculture. Agriculture may not be responsible for all of them, or 50%, or some number like that, but we know that we have to do a better job. Lake Erie produces about 50% of all the fish in the Grand Lakes, but only holds 2% of all the water in the Grand Lakes. So it's a shallow lake. It's the most southern lake. It warms up the fastest every year, has the biggest algae issues. And we've had some pretty good research from Heidelberg College that shows us the nutrient load that goes into Lake Erie. So we all know that we have to do a better job than we have in the past years.
And producers and farmers in Ohio and all over the country are good environmental stewards. I believe what you're trying to accomplish here with your research is how to really tweak that and just make them better.
Yes. The manure applied to growing crops makes good environmental sense, but it also makes good economic sense. The opportunity is going to be there as we've adopted the RTK systems, the auto steer systems. The opportunity is coming. Technology is going to allow farmers to make better use of their livestock manure than ever before. You know, if we're talking about putting it on pre-emergent corn, well, that would be unheard of a few years ago because nobody wants to drive down through a cornfield trying to guess where the row is. But with the technology we have with GPS, the tractor will lead us where we need to go, and we just need to look at ways that we can make these new technologies work in the area of livestock manure.
You know, Glenn, one thing that strikes me with the research you're doing, while for a long time folks have viewed this animal waste as just that and trying to figure out a way to make it something that it really isn't, your research is going to make it to take this to make us green.
Right. We're going to go ahead and leave the manure in its current form. You know, we're not going to try to make asphalt or shingles or pavement out of it. Leave it in its current form because it's rich in nutrients the way it is, and just look at the timing of when we want to put that on the field and use the current technology available to do that. So you usually have a window of 3 or 4 weeks in the spring after the corn's been planted before it even begins to come up high enough to be an issue. So that could be a window of application that we'd want to look at. And actually the growing point of the corn stays below ground well into the growth of that plant. I mean, it can be several inches high. So we want to continue to do research on corn on different stages, timing of a manure side dressing. And again, our end thought process always is how long can we apply this manure in this spring, early summer time period? How can we make the best use of the raw product we have to work with right now? Another modification is we've worked to put closing wheels behind the Dietrich sweeps or behind the Yetter colders that we've used, because we found that if we can cover up the manure, you know, we eliminate the odor, we eliminate the visual part of that, and it looks like you side dress the field with 28 or anhydrous ammonia. You have that little mound of dirt between the rows of corn. So if we can't smell it, then we're capturing the nitrogen. That's really, really important. And years ago, when we first started these plots, we were hopeful to be even with 28% nitrogen in corn yield. Now that we've gotten better at it, we look at being even with anhydrous ammonia in yield. So we'll know this fall if we're able to make that happen or not.
Well, you know, along that same line, it takes a lot of help and a lot of cooperation with a lot of folks to make your plots work, the equipment, so on and so forth.
Yes. Anytime you do research plots, a lot of things have to fall together. I'd like to thank Steve Layfeld at Layfeld Equipment for the tractor that we're able to use on the plots this year. Terry and Ryan McClure of Grover Hill, McClure Farms, they provide the tanker we're able to use this year. And Home and Equipment and the Dietrich Toolbar Company have worked together to get us some narrow sweeps to make our manure application go more smoothly, and some closing wheels. That's been a big help. And also financially, Ohio State contributes with my salary and that type of stuff. We got a nutrient reduction grant through the Soil and Water Office to help offset some of our costs, because when we're all said and done, we'll have $1,500 in diesel fuel just with these plots here in Mercer County alone. And all the farmers who cooperate, because this is an odd time of year for them to see manure going onto their fields. Many of them just finished planting, then they want to side dress, and there's hay to be made, there's haylage to be cut, there's a ton of things that they need to be doing, and they still allow me to come out here and do my research plots, and so all that really, really helps us out.
Glenn, you know, with all the research you're doing, you mentioned that you're replicating these plots in several areas in the state. Why are you doing that?
Well, I think it's always good when you have local research. When you're talking to a Mercer County farmer, you have results from Mercer County fields, or a Darke County farmer, or a Crawford County farmer. All soils are different across the state. Some are heavier, some don't handle the weight of the equipment as well. And it's just really good when farmers can see data that comes from a local farm close to them or their own fields, because then it's more relevant than something that you brought from a research plot that they really don't know the parameters around it.
Glenn, if somebody wanted to find out more information about what your research is at the Ohio State University through the extension, where can they go?
Well, basically, if you want to go to the web, you can go to the Ohio Agronomics Crops Team page. And at that site is our on-farm plot link. And all the plots that I write up and have written up for several years are all on the web. Also, we intend to make YouTube videos out of some of this. They aren't available yet, but that's going to be something coming. And then usually I'll take a lot of this information to the Conservation Tillage Conference and a number of other educational programs throughout the winter that if they see my name on the agenda, they can pretty much guess I'm going to be talking about something related to my manure plots.
Well, Glenn, as always, a pleasure. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
We'll be back with more in Ohio Country Today right after this.